The pain hit me like a freight train as I doubled over in the kitchen, a forgotten glass of water shattering against the tile floor. My 5-year-old twins, Emma and Ethan, looked up from their coloring books, their eyes wide with fear. "Mommy," Emma's voice wavered. "Are you okay?" I tried to straighten up, to reassure them with a smile, but another wave of pain tore through my abdomen. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed my parents' number. It was Christmas Eve, and I had nowhere else to turn. David would have known what to do. David would have been here. But David had been gone for 8 months now, taken by a drunk driver on a rainy April evening, leaving me alone with our children and a house full of memories. "Hello?" My mother's voice crackled through the speaker, the sound of Christmas music playing in the background. "Mom?" I gasped, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I need help. Something's wrong. I think I need to go to the hospital." There was a pause, a hesitation that seemed to stretch for an eternity. "Oh, Natasha," she sighed, and I could picture her exchanging glances with my father. "We're just about to leave for the Elton John concert with Jessica. You know we've had these tickets for months." My sister's laughter echoed in the background, and I closed my eyes, trying to breathe through the pain. Of course, Jessica always came first, the golden child, the favorite. It had been that way since we were children. "The twins," I managed, gripping the counter for support. "Could you just come watch Emma and Ethan while I go to the emergency room? Please." Another pause. "Can't you call someone else? A neighbor, perhaps? You're always so dramatic, Natasha. Remember when you thought you had appendicitis and it was just gas? That was 15 years ago, when I was 18. I'd driven myself to the hospital, waited alone in the emergency room while my parents attended Jessica's dance recital. Some things never changed. Mom, please, I begged, my voice breaking. I really need help. I heard my father's voice in the mom background. Tell her we can't miss this concert. We paid a fortune for these tickets. You heard your father, my mother said, her tone dismissive. You've always been such a nuisance and a burden, Natasha. Always needing something, always in some kind of crisis. Figure it out yourself. You're a grown woman. The call ended, and I stared at the phone in disbelief. A nuisance and a burden. The words echoed in my mind as I slid down to the kitchen floor, my back against the cabinets. Emma approached cautiously, her small hand reaching for mine. Are you crying, Mommy? She asked, her voice small. I wiped my tears quickly and forced a smile. I'm okay, sweetie. Mommy's tummy just hurts a little bit. Ethan joined us, his eyes serious behind his glasses. Should we call 911? That's what Miss Johnson taught us at school? My brilliant, thoughtful children. What had I done to deserve them? I nodded slowly, realizing there was no other option. Yes, that's a good idea, Ethan. Can you bring me the phone? Within 30 minutes, an ambulance arrived. The paramedics were kind but concerned as they helped me onto the stretcher. My neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, had heard the commotion and came outside, offering to watch the twins until arrangements could be made. My parents, I explained weakly as they loaded me into the ambulance. They're supposed to be here. They're their grandparents. Mrs. Rodriguez squeezed my hand. Don't worry about the children. We'll figure something out. As the ambulance doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Emma and Ethan standing in the doorway, their small faces etched with worry. I'd never spent a night away from them since David died. They needed me, and I needed them. They were all I had left. The hospital was chaotic, filled with holiday emergencies and the steady beep of monitors. The diagnosis came quickly. A ruptured ovarian cyst, internal bleeding, emergency surgery required. As they prepared me for the operating room, I realized I needed to make arrangements for the twins. Mrs. Rodriguez couldn't keep them overnight. She was leaving town in the morning to visit her daughter. With shaking hands, I scrolled through my contacts. Friends who had already left town for the holidays, colleagues who lived too far away. My finger hovered over my parents' number, but I couldn't bring myself to call them again. A nuisance and a burden. The words still stung. A young nurse noticed my distress. "Is everything okay, Miss Wilson?" I shook my head, tears welling in my eyes. "My children," I explained. "My twins. They're 5 and I don't have anyone to watch them. My husband died earlier this year, and my parents—" My voice trailed off. The nurse, Sarah according to her name tag, squeezed my hand. "Let me see what I can do." As they wheeled me toward the operating room, Sarah returned with a tablet. "We have a hospital social worker on call. She's going to video chat with you before you go under." The face of a kind-looking woman in her 50s appeared on the screen. "Ms. Wilson, I'm Linda Barnes. Sarah explained your situation. We're going to help you figure this out." Through tears, I explained everything: the twins, my parents' refusal, the lack of options. Linda listened attentively, nodding. "What about a professional caregiver?" she suggested. "We work with several reputable agencies that provide emergency childcare. They're thoroughly vetted, and your children would be safe and comfortable in their own home." "I can't afford," I began, thinking of the medical bills that would soon arrive. "Let's worry about that later," Linda interrupted gently. "Right now, let's focus on getting you the surgery you need and making sure your children are cared for." Within minutes, Linda had arranged for a qualified nanny named Maria to go to my home. Mrs. Rodriguez would stay until Maria arrived, and the hospital would provide my medical information to Maria in case of emergency. It wasn't ideal, but it was the best solution available. As the anesthesia began to take effect, I thought of my parents, probably enjoying the concert with Jessica, completely unaware, or worse, unconcerned, that their daughter was being wheeled into surgery, and their grandchildren were being left with a stranger on Christmas Eve. I thought of David, of how he would have moved heaven and earth to be by my side. I thought of the financial support I had provided to my parents over the past 3 years, paying their mortgage when my father lost his job, covering Jessica's wedding expenses when they claimed they couldn't afford it. A nuisance and a burden. As consciousness slipped away, I made a decision. It was time to cut the ties that bound me to people who couldn't see my worth, who had never seen it. It was time to stop being everyone else's safety net when no one was willing to be mine. It was time to be free. The recovery room was quiet, the soft beeping of monitors creating a rhythmic backdrop to my scattered thoughts. I blinked slowly, the ceiling coming into focus as the anesthesia wore off. A dull pain throbbed in my abdomen, but it was nothing compared to the agony I'd felt before the surgery. "Welcome back, Ms. Wilson." A nurse I hadn't seen before checked my vitals. "The surgery went well. Dr. Patel will be in shortly to explain everything." My first coherent thought was of the twins. "My children," I croaked, my throat dry and scratchy. "Are they okay?" The nurse nodded, offering me a small cup of water with a straw. "The social worker has been keeping tabs. They're fine, being well looked after." Relief washed over me, followed quickly by a wave of sadness. It was Christmas morning, and my children were waking up with a stranger. No presents under the tree yet. I had planned to set them out after they went to sleep on Christmas Eve. No special breakfast, no traditions honored. Dr. Patel, a petite woman with kind eyes, entered the room with a tablet in hand. "Ms. Wilson, I'm glad to see you're awake. We were able to stop the bleeding and remove the ruptured cyst. Everything went smoothly, but you'll need to take it easy for a few weeks." "How long will I be here?" I asked, already calculating how quickly I could get home to Emma and Ethan. "We'd like to keep you for at least 24 hours for observation. You lost quite a bit of blood, and we want to make sure there are no complications. 24 hours, a lifetime when your children need you." "My kids," I began, but Dr. Patel raised a hand. "I've spoken with Linda, our social worker. She's arranged for the nanny to stay as long as needed. Your children are safe, Miss Wilson. Your job right now is to rest and recover." I nodded, too exhausted to argue. As Dr. Patel left, I reached for my phone on the bedside table, wanting to check for any messages from my parents. Surely by now they would have tried to contact me to see if I was okay. The screen was blank. No missed calls, no text messages, just a festive wallpaper of the twins and me in matching Christmas sweaters taken a week earlier at their school. Holiday party. With trembling fingers, I dialed my mother's number. It went straight to voicemail. I tried my father's phone with the same result. Finally, I called Jessica. She answered on the third ring, her voice groggy. "Natasha, do you have any idea what time it is?" "It's 8 in the morning, Jess, on Christmas Day." "Exactly." We were out late at the concert, and then Mom and Dad came back to our place for drinks. "What's so urgent?" I took a deep breath, fighting back tears. "I'm in the hospital. I had emergency surgery last night." There was a pause, and I could hear her sitting up, probably nudging her husband awake. "What? What happened?" "A ruptured ovarian cyst, internal bleeding. They had to operate immediately." "Oh my God, Tash. Are you okay? Why didn't you call?" A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "I did call. I called Mom and Dad before the ambulance came. They were too busy getting ready for the concert with you." Another pause, longer this time. "They didn't mention anything." "Of course they didn't. They never do when it comes to me." The words came out sharper than I intended, years of hurt bubbling to the surface. The twins spent Christmas Eve with a nanny the hospital arranged because our parents refused to help. "Natasha, I'm sure there was just a misunderstanding." "There was no misunderstanding, Jessica. Mom called me a nuisance and a burden." Those were her exact words, right before she hung up on me while I was doubled over in pain on my kitchen floor. Jessica was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry, Tash. That's awful. What can I do?" "Do? You want me to come to the hospital?" "No," I said firmly. "What I want is for you to tell Mom and Dad that I'm done. I'm done being their safety net. I'm done paying their mortgage and their credit card bills. I'm done putting their needs before mine and my children's. As of today, they're on their own." "Natasha, you can't just cut them off. They depend on you. Dad still hasn't found a steady job, and you know Mom's health insurance doesn't cover all her medications. And you think that matters to me right now? After what they did? After they left my children, their grandchildren, with a stranger on Christmas Eve so they could go to a concert?" "It wasn't just any concert," Jessica protested weakly. "It was Elton John's farewell tour." I closed my eyes, suddenly exhausted. "Goodbye, Jessica. Merry Christmas." I ended the call before she could respond, turning my phone off completely. For the first time in my adult life, I put my own needs first. It felt terrifying and liberating all at once. Linda, the social worker, visited me later, that morning with updates about the twins. Maria, the nanny, was experienced and compassionate. She had found the unwrapped presents in my closet and placed them under the tree, telling the children that I had asked her to do this special task. She made them pancakes in the shape of Christmas trees and helped them video chat with me. "Mommy, when are you coming home?" Emma asked, her face too close to the camera. "Maria is nice, but she doesn't know how to do the voices for bedtime stories." "I'll be home tomorrow, sweetheart," I promised. "And then I'll do all the voices you want." Ethan pushed his way into the frame. "I saved you some pancakes, Mommy. Maria put them in the freezer so you can have them when you get better." My heart squeezed with love for these two little humans, who had already endured so much loss. "That's very thoughtful, buddy. I can't wait to try them." After the call ended, Linda sat in the chair beside my bed. "They seem like wonderful children, Ms. Wilson." "They are," I agreed, wiping away tears. "They're everything to me." Linda nodded, making notes on her tablet. "I understand from our conversation yesterday that you've been supporting your parents. Financially?" I nodded, surprised by the change in subject. "Since my father lost his job 3 years ago, my husband and I helped them with their mortgage, medical bills, even my sister's wedding. After David died, I continued the support. It wasn't easy, but they're family. And now you're considering cutting that support off? I've already decided, I said firmly. What happened last night was the final straw, but it's been building for years. They've always favored my sister, always made me feel less than. And now they've shown they can't be bothered to help their own grandchildren in an emergency. Linda considered this, her expression thoughtful. It's important to set boundaries, Ms. Wilson. But I want to make sure you're making this decision from a place of clarity, not just emotional reaction. I appreciate your concern, I said, touched by her kindness. But this isn't just an emotional reaction. It's self-preservation, for me and for my children. She nodded, accepting my decision. If you'd like, I can refer you to a support group for single parents. It might help to connect with others who understand what you're going through. I hadn't considered that. A community of people who knew the unique challenges I faced. I'd like that, I said softly. Thank you. As Linda left, a text message arrived from Jessica. Mom and Dad are upset. They say you're being unreasonable. Please call them. I didn't respond. For once, my parents' feelings weren't my priority. My children were. My recovery was. My future was. The next morning, Dr. Patel discharged me with strict instructions to rest and follow up in 2 weeks. Maria had agreed to stay on for the remainder of the holiday week, coming daily to help with the twins and household tasks while I recovered. Her agency had worked out a payment plan that wouldn't bankrupt me, a small mercy in the midst of the chaos. When I arrived home, Emma and Ethan rushed to greet me, their faces alight with joy. They had made welcome home cards, decorated with wobbly hearts and stick figure drawings of our family, just the 3 of us. We missed you, Mommy, Emma said, her arms wrapped tightly around my neck. But we were brave, just like you said we should be. You were so brave, I agreed, holding them close, breathing in their familiar scent of baby shampoo and the chocolate milk they probably had for breakfast. I'm so proud of you both. The house was tidy, with a vase of fresh flowers on the kitchen table, Maria's touch. She greeted me warmly, helping me settle onto the couch with pillows and a blanket. The children were wonderful, she assured me. They mentioned their grandparents a few times, wondering why they didn't come for Christmas. I wasn't sure what to tell them. I sighed, watching as Emma and Ethan returned to playing with their new toys. The truth, I suppose, that their grandparents had other plans that were more important to them. Maria looked troubled. Children need family, Ms. Wilson, even flawed family. I nodded, acknowledging her wisdom. They do, but they also need to know their worth. I won't let them grow up thinking they're less deserving of love and attention than anyone else. I won't let them be dismissed and overlooked the way I was. Over the next few days, my parents called repeatedly. I didn't answer. Jessica visited once, bringing get-well gifts for me and belated Christmas presents for the twins. She tried to mediate, to explain away our parents' behavior, but I remained firm in my decision. They made their choice, Jess. Now I'm making mine. A week after the surgery, my father showed up unannounced. I was alone. Maria had taken the twins to the park to give me some quiet time to rest. He looked older than I remembered, more frail, the lines in his face deeper. Natasha, he began, standing awkwardly in the doorway. You haven't been answering our calls. No, I haven't, I agreed, not inviting him in. He shifted uncomfortably. Your mother and I are concerned. Jessica said you were in the hospital? Something about surgery? I stared at him incredulously. You know exactly what happened, Dad. I called you when I needed help. You and Mom chose a concert over your daughter and grandchildren. He had the decency to look ashamed. We didn't realize it was that serious. It shouldn't matter how serious it was. My voice rose, the anger I'd been suppressing finally breaking free. I asked for help. I needed you. The twins needed you. And you said no because you had concert. Tickets. Natasha, be reasonable. We've been planning that night for months. Elton John is your mother's favorite, and I'm your daughter. I was shouting now, tears streaming down my face. Emma and Ethan are your grandchildren. We should come first, not some concert, not Jessica, not anything else. He reached for me, but I stepped back. I think you should leave, Dad. Natasha, please, we need to talk about the mortgage payment. It's due next week, and without your help? And there it was, the real reason for his visit. Let me be perfectly clear, I said, my voice low and controlled. I will not be making any more payments on your behalf. Not the mortgage, not the credit cards, not Mom's medications. You're on your own. His face paled. You can't do that. No, we're struggling. Your mother's arthritis is worse, and the insurance— I don't care, I interrupted, the words like acid on my tongue. But they needed to be said. I have 2 children to support on my own. I have medical bills to pay. I have a life to rebuild after losing my husband, and I won't set myself on fire to keep you warm anymore. He left without another word, the door closing with a soft click that somehow felt more final than a slam would have. I sank to the floor, my surgical incision throbbing in time with my racing heart. It hurt to turn my back on my parents, regardless of how they had treated me. But it would hurt more to continue being devalued and taken advantage of. It would hurt more to teach my children that this was what love looked like. Maria returned, with the twins an hour later, finding me still on the floor, leaning against the wall. She helped me to the couch without asking questions, brought me tea, and distracted the children while I composed myself. That night, after the twins were asleep, I called David's parents in Florida. We hadn't spoken much since the funeral. The grief was too raw, the conversations too painful, but they deserved to know what had happened. You should have called us. Immediately, David's mother admonished gently. We would have been on the first flight out. I know, I acknowledged. I wasn't thinking clearly. We're coming, she decided. Robert can be there by the weekend, and I'll follow as soon as I wrap things up at work. Those are our grandchildren, Natasha, and you're our daughter, even if it's not by blood. The relief that washed over me was overwhelming. Family didn't have to mean blood relations. It meant people who showed up when you needed them, people who put your needs alongside their own. The following weeks were a blur of recovery, adjustments, and hard conversations. David's father, Robert, stayed for 2 weeks, taking the twins to school, making meals, becoming the grandfather figure they desperately needed. My parents made several attempts to contact me, leaving voicemails that ranged from apologetic to accusatory. We're your parents, Natasha. You can't just cut us off. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof because of the stress you're causing. The bank called about the mortgage. What are we supposed to do? I deleted each message, without responding. It wasn't easy, and there were nights I lay awake, questioning my decision. But each morning, seeing my children's faces, I knew I had made the right choice. They deserved better than what my parents had to offer, and so did I. I joined the support group Linda had recommended, finding solace in the company of other single parents who understood the unique challenges I faced. We met weekly, sharing stories, advice, and sometimes just a shoulder to cry on. It was through this group that I met Rachel, a widowed mother of 3 who had lost her husband to cancer the year before. She lived just a few blocks away, and quickly became a friend and confidant. It gets easier, she assured me one evening, as we watched our children play together in her backyard. Not the grief, that's always there, but the day-to-day stuff. You figure out routines, shortcuts, you learn to ask for help. I was never good at that, I admitted. Asking for help. Rachel nudged my shoulder gently. Well, you're learning. Now. That's all that matters. With Rachel's encouragement, I began to build a network of support. Other parents from the twins' school, neighbors who offered to babysit, colleagues who understood when I needed to leave early for a school event. It wasn't the same as having David by my side, but it was something. It was enough to keep us afloat. 3 months after the surgery, Jessica showed up at my door on a Sunday afternoon. The twins were at a birthday party, and I was enjoying a rare moment of solitude. "They lost the house," she announced without preamble, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "The bank foreclosed last week." I absorbed this information silently, watching as she paced my living room. "Where are they staying?" I finally asked. "With me and Mark, for now." Jessica ran a hand through her hair, a gesture reminiscent of our mother. "It's temporary, just until they figure something out. But it's cramped, and Mark is losing patience already." I knew what was coming next. "I can't help them, Jess. I made that clear." "They're our parents, Natasha. You can't just abandon them because of one mistake." "One mistake?" I echoed incredulously. "It wasn't one mistake. It was a lifetime of being overlooked, undervalued, taken for granted. It was them choosing a concert over their grandchildren's safety. It was Mom calling me a nuisance and a burden when I needed her most." Jessica collapsed onto the couch, her anger deflating. "They're sorry, Tash. They really are. Dad cries sometimes when he thinks no one can hear him. Mom keeps looking at photos of the twins, saying she's a terrible grandmother." "Being sorry isn't enough," I said firmly, though my resolve was weakening. "They need to understand what they did, why it was wrong, and promise that it won't happen again." Jessica looked up at me, her eyes pleading. "Will you at least talk to them? Give them a chance to apologize in person?" I considered this request, weighing the potential benefits against the risk of further pain. "On one condition," I finally said. "They come here, to my home. They see how we've been living, how we've been managing without their help, and they apologize to Emma and Ethan, not just to me." Jessica nodded eagerly. "I'll arrange it. Thank you, Tash." After she left, I called Rachel, needing her balanced perspective. "Am I making a mistake? Letting them back in?" "Only you can answer that," she said thoughtfully. "But from what you've told me, it sounds like they're facing real consequences for their actions for the first time. That's not a bad place to start rebuilding." The meeting was set for the following Saturday. I prepared the twins, explaining in simple terms that Grandma and Grandpa had made poor choices but wanted to say sorry and do better. Emma, always quick to forgive, was excited at the prospect of seeing them. Ethan, more reserved and sensitive, regarded me with solemn eyes. "Will they make you sad again, Mommy?" he asked, his small hand resting on my cheek. My heart swelled with love for this perceptive child. "I hope not, buddy, but if they do, we'll handle it together, okay?" He nodded, satisfied with this answer. "Okay, and if they're mean, we can ask them to leave." Uncle Robert taught me how to say "please exit the premises" in a very serious voice. I laughed, imagining my 5-year-old son solemnly instructing his grandparents to leave. "That's right. This is our home, and everyone who visits needs to be kind and respectful." When the doorbell rang at exactly 2 o'clock, the twins were playing in their room, giving me a chance to speak with my parents privately first. I opened the door to find them standing awkwardly on the porch, my father holding a bouquet of flowers, my mother clutching her purse like a shield. "Natasha," my father began, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for seeing us." I stepped aside to let them enter, accepting the flowers with a murmured thanks. They looked smaller somehow, diminished. My mother had lost weight, the angles of her face sharper than I remembered. My father's shoulders were hunched, as if carrying an invisible burden. We sat in the living room, an uncomfortable silence settling over us until my mother finally spoke. "Your home is lovely, Natasha. Very warm." "Thank you," I replied, my voice carefully neutral. The twins helped me choose the new paint colors. We needed a fresh start after David. She nodded, understanding. "Jessica told us about your surgery. About how you called us for help." "Yes," I said simply, waiting. My father cleared his throat. "We were wrong, Natasha. Deeply, unforgivably wrong. There's no excuse for what we did. for how we behaved. We've always taken you for granted, my mother continued, tears welling in her eyes. You were always so capable, so independent. Jessica needed more attention, more guidance. That's not true, I interrupted, years of resentment bubbling up. Jessica didn't need more. You gave her more because it was easier, because she demanded it, and I didn't. Because I was the good girl who never complained, who always did what was expected without question. My parents exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement of the truth in my words. You're right, my father admitted. We favored Jessica. It wasn't fair to you, and we can't change the past. But we can try to do better now if you'll give us the chance. I studied them, searching for sincerity in their expressions. You hurt me, I said quietly. Not just at Christmas, but throughout my life. You made me feel like I wasn't enough, like my needs didn't matter, and then you made me feel guilty for having needs at all. My mother reached for my hand, and after a moment's hesitation, I let her take it. I'm so sorry, Natasha, for calling you a nuisance and a burden. You've never been either of those things. You've been our rock, our support, when we didn't deserve it. The financial support, I began, needing to be absolutely clear. That's over. I can't continue to subsidize your lifestyle, especially now that I'm raising the twins alone. We understand, my father nodded. We've already started making changes. Your mother has gone back to work part-time at the library, and I've found a job at the hardware store. It's not much, but it's a start. And we're looking for a small apartment, my mother added. Something affordable, within our means. I hadn't expected this level of acceptance, this willingness to adapt. It was a promising sign. I appreciate that, I said honestly. It's important to me that Emma and Ethan see healthy relationships, healthy boundaries. I don't want them growing up thinking that love means sacrificing yourself entirely for others. We want to be part of their lives, my mother said earnestly. To be better grandparents than we were parents. If you'll allow it. I considered their request. The twins deserved to know their grandparents, flawed as they were. And perhaps, with clear boundaries and expectations, we could build a healthier relationship moving forward. We can start slowly, I decided. Supervised visits here at the house. We'll see how it goes. Relief washed over their faces. Thank you, Natasha, my father said, his voice breaking. Thank you for giving us another chance. I called the twins in then, watching carefully as they greeted their grandparents. Emma, true to form, launched herself into their arms with unrestrained joy. Ethan hung back, observing, until my father knelt to his level. I owe you an apology, young man, he said solemnly. I wasn't there when you needed me. That wasn't okay, and I'm very sorry. Ethan considered this, his expression serious. Are you going to help Mommy now? She gets tired sometimes after the doctor fixed her tummy. My father glanced up at me, his eyes filled with remorse. Yes, if your mommy says it's okay, I'd like to help. Maybe I could read you stories or play games with you while she rests. Ethan nodded, apparently satisfied with this answer. I like dinosaur stories the best, and you have to do the roaring sound right, or it doesn't count. A smile crept across my father's face. I'll practice my roaring, I promise. The afternoon unfolded with tentative conversations, shared memories, and the beginnings of healing. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of tension, old patterns threatening to resurface. But there was also laughter, genuine efforts to connect, and a newfound respect that hadn't existed before. As they prepared to leave, my mother pulled me aside. We don't deserve your forgiveness, Natasha, but we're grateful for the opportunity to earn it. I nodded, acknowledging the long road ahead of us. One day at a time, I told her. That's all any of us can do. After they left, I sat on the porch swing, watching as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. The twins played in the yard, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. There was still so much uncertainty, so much healing to be done. But for the first time in months, perhaps years, I felt a sense of possibility, of hope. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. How did it go? Wine and debrief later? I smiled, grateful for this friendship that had come into my life when I needed it most. Yes, please, they're trying. It's a start. 6 months after the surgery, life had settled into a new normal. The twins had adjusted well, thriving in kindergarten, with the support of their teachers and our growing community of friends. David's parents visited regularly, becoming a steady presence in our lives. And my relationship with my own parents had evolved into something cautiously positive. They had found a small apartment near Jessica, modest but comfortable. My father worked full-time at the hardware store, while my mother's library position had expanded to include children's story time, a role she embraced with unexpected enthusiasm. They lived within their means now, no longer dependent on my financial support. Every Sunday, they came for dinner, arriving with small gifts for the twins and offers to help around the house. My father had become adept at fixing leaky faucets and wobbly furniture, while my mother often stayed after dinner to fold laundry or prepare lunches for the week ahead. Small gestures, but meaningful ones. One Sunday in June, as we sat on the deck watching the twins chase fireflies in the twilight, my mother turned to me. "I've been seeing a therapist," she confessed quietly, "to understand why I treated you the way I did, why I favored Jessica for so long." I looked at her in surprise. My mother had always scoffed at therapy, calling it nonsense for people too, weak to handle their own problems. "It's helping," she continued, her fingers tracing the pattern on her teacup. "I'm beginning to see patterns from my own childhood, ways my mother treated me that I unconsciously repeated with you." "I'm glad," I said sincerely. "That can't be easy." She shook her head. "It's not, but it's necessary. I don't want to lose you again, Natasha. I don't want to lose the twins. And I don't want to be the person I was, someone who could turn away from her own child in need." I reached over and squeezed her hand, a gesture of understanding if not quite forgiveness. Healing would take time, perhaps years, but we had made a start. A year after the surgery, I stood in the kitchen, preparing dinner while the twins set the table for our Sunday family meal. David's parents were visiting from Florida, and my parents would arrive soon. Rachel and her children were coming too, bringing dessert. Our small house would be full, noisy, chaotic in the best possible way. As I chopped vegetables, my gaze fell on a framed photo on the counter, the twins and me at their 6th birthday party, our faces smeared with frosting and lit with genuine joy. Next to it stood another frame, this one holding a picture of David, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he laughed at some forgotten joke. I'd kept his photo in a drawer for months after his death, the sight of him too painful to bear. Now, it brought comfort, a reminder of the love that had shaped our family. The doorbell rang, and Emma raced to answer it, Ethan close behind. I heard my parents' voices, warm greetings exchanged, the rustle of shopping bags containing whatever small treasures they'd brought this week. My father's deeper tones asking Ethan about his latest science project. My mother's softer voice complimenting Emma on her new dress. I remained in the kitchen, giving them space to develop these relationships on their own terms. It hadn't been a smooth road these past months. There had been missteps, moments when old habits reasserted themselves. But there had also been genuine effort, sincere apologies, and a slow building of trust. My mother appeared in the doorway, a grocery bag in her arms. "I brought those rolls you like from the bakery," she said, setting the bag on the counter, "and some fresh strawberries for the twins. They look beautiful this week." "Thank you," I said, making room for her in the small kitchen. "That's thoughtful." She washed her hands and began to hull the strawberries, working alongside me in comfortable silence. After a moment, she spoke without looking up. "I had a dream about you last night. You were little, maybe 4 or 5, and you had fallen at the playground. You were crying, holding out your skinned knee, asking me to make it better. Her voice faltered, and in the dream, I walked away, leaving you there alone. I stopped, chopping, turning to look at her. Tears shimmered in her eyes. I woke up feeling terrible, she continued. And it made me realize something I've been trying to put into words for months now. I failed you, Natasha, not just at Christmas, but throughout your life. I was supposed to be the one you could always count on, and instead I made you feel like a burden, like your needs were an imposition. She set down the knife, meeting my gaze directly. I want you to know that I understand now what I did wrong, and I'm truly, deeply sorry. In that moment, looking into my mother's eyes, I saw something I'd been searching for my entire life. Recognition. She saw me, not as an extension of herself, not as a support system, not as a disappointment or a burden, but as I truly was. A person deserving of love and respect. Thank you for saying that, I said softly. It means a lot to hear it. She nodded, wiping away tears. Your father and I have been talking. We'd like to start a college fund for the twins. Nothing fancy, just a small amount each month. We know it's not our responsibility, but that would be wonderful, I interrupted, genuinely touched by the gesture. The twins would love knowing that you're helping plan for their future. My mother smiled, relief evident in her expression. Good. That's good. She hesitated, then added, and if you ever need help, real help, not just with the little things, I hope you'll ask us. I hope you'll give us the chance to show you that we've changed. I will, I promised, and meant it. Not because I felt obligated, not because they were my parents and I owed them something, but because I chose to. Because forgiveness, when earned, through genuine repentance and changed behavior, was healing for everyone involved. The back door opened, and Rachel entered with her children, carrying a towering chocolate cake. I know I went overboard, she admitted with a laugh, but the kids insisted we needed extra frosting. David's parents arrived minutes later, his father carrying a bottle of wine, his mother immediately joining the twins in the living room to see their latest art projects. The house filled with voices, laughter, the comforting sounds of family, both blood-related and chosen. As we gathered around the table, squeezing extra chairs into every available space, I looked at the faces surrounding me, my children, growing stronger and happier each day. My parents, flawed but trying. David's parents, steadfast in their love. Rachel and her children, a reminder that family could be found in unexpected places. A year ago, collapsed on my kitchen floor in pain. I had felt utterly alone, abandoned by those who should have cared for me most. Now I was surrounded by people who showed their love, not just through words, but through actions, through showing up, through respecting boundaries, and acknowledging mistakes, through genuine efforts to change. Mommy? Emma tugged at my sleeve, her voice a stage whisper. Can we eat now? I'm starving. I laughed, pulling her onto my lap for a quick hug. Yes, sweetie, let's eat. As the food was passed around, conversations flowing freely across the table, I realized that the pain of that Christmas Eve hadn't disappeared entirely. It had transformed, becoming part of the foundation of a stronger, more authentic self. The woman who had allowed herself to be overlooked, who had accepted scraps of attention and called it love, who had supported others at the expense of her own well-being, she was gone. In her place stood someone braver, someone who knew her worth, and wasn't afraid to demand that others recognize it too. Someone who understood that love without respect wasn't love at all. I caught my mother's eye across the table. She smiled, a tentative offering still tinged with shame for past wrongs. I smiled back, accepting the olive branch. We were finding our way to a new relationship, one built on honesty rather than obligation. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough. Later, after the dishes were cleared and the guests had departed, I tucked the twins into bed, reading them their favorite stories and singing the lullabies David had taught me when they were infants. As I kissed their foreheads and turned out the lights, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead wasn't entirely clear. There would be challenges, setbacks, moments when grief would resurface with breathtaking intensity. But I was no longer walking that road alone, nor was I carrying others at the expense of myself. I had learned to ask for help when I needed it, to set boundaries when they were necessary, to recognize the difference between genuine love and emotional manipulation. I had learned, at 33 years old, what it meant to be truly free. Standing. In the quiet hallway between my children's rooms, I whispered a silent thank you to the woman I had been a year ago, the one who, in her darkest moment, had found the courage to say, "No more," to demand better, to begin the journey toward healing. And then I walked downstairs to sit on my porch in the cool evening air, my heart full, my spirit at rest, ready to embrace whatever the future might hold.